Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taormina.
Welcome to OAA Now. Here I'm Sammy Taormina, blogger around the OAA, the host of Last Three Brain Cells, and the host of Tweet Terminas on Orion Neighbor Television. I'd like to welcome those watching on the local voice on SoundCloud and those watching on Orion Neighbor Television. A lot to look at this week here on the podcast. I did write some storylines for basketball and football season coming up. But the big story here around the league has to be what in the world is going on at Stoney Creek. A lot of big changes over there. We're going to talk about that, go more in depth about that, and I think really that's really where the where everything has to be at as we look at heading into the season is, what is going on over there at Stoney Creek. We're going to talk about what's been going on, my thoughts on the situation over there, and we'll get to it here on this week's edition podcast. So, without further ado, let's talk about our main story here. Of course, it is that Stoney Creek story. Stoney Creek boys basketball coach Jeff Owen was let go at Stoney Creek after coaching 3 years with the program. Stoney Creek. Coach Owen went 19-47 his 3 years over there at Stoney Creek. He's had some real tough losses. You really look at what the situation is over there at Stoney Creek was, and I think there were some good wins that he had under his belt, but there were some really questionable losses. You really look at some of those losses he had were just inexcusable, indescribable. I know the first 2 years. I know this year Stoney Creek went 10-12. Lost to Rochester Adams in the district semifinals. That was 48-46. But you kind of think about, you look at with Stoney Creek with them. What happened was this whole mess kind of started in 2022. On the boys' side, of course, Stoney Creek was very, very successful under Coach Dean Norgrove. Then the following year, they had a really down year. They had a rough year. Kind of the parents, the class of 2022, forced Norgrove out at Stoney Creek. And then you bring in Jeff Owen, very successful at Warren Mott. So you look at and say, okay, how's this gonna work? How is this gonna work? First year it was really rough. 3-17. You kind of think about the schedule Owen put together in his first year. Just playing Macomb, Dakota, playing Clarkston. It was, and then it was going to be a really tall task with this class. Obviously, you look at this class, it was a senior-heavy class that they had over there. But it just really didn't mesh. I thought, I'll be honest with you, heading into the year, I thought with this move, with the division they were in, you kind of thought that they were going to make that move. And, I thought, honestly, they were going to win the division. I really thought they were going to win the division. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. They came off. They really struggled. Had some bad losses on there. There were some really bad losses that they had. Their best wins were Berkeley and Royal Oak in the first year. But just really some really bad losses. And I remember the Lake Orion game really well. That game where they were just absolutely devoured. I could not believe it. I was stunned that running clock was put on them. It was stunning. And then you look at the second year, you kind of thought, okay, second year, you're going to have your system put in place. It was a little bit better, 6-16. You kind of think about was 6-16, a little bit better, but still not to where you expect Stoney Creek to be at. And then your third year, there's some pressure on you. They had a good year. I mean, they had a nice year. I mean, it went 10-12, but they had some really bad losses. I mean, and I think really, honestly, the two losses that really stick out was the losses, and both were home games. The loss to Ferndale University was really bad for this team because, you kind of look at the enrollment discrepancy between both Berkeley and Ferndale U. Ferndale U's in Division II. I give credit Coach Josh Nix for what he did with that team. But if you're Stoney Creek, that's not a good look. Really is not. And then a couple weeks later, you get beat by A&T on your home floor. So that tells me right there that this program really wasn't, going anywhere. And then you kind of think about there was a disconnect a little bit between the players and the coaches. You kind of started to feel, I'll be honest with you, I started to question it when they weren't getting in the same page. They weren't really getting in that same page. And, and that's where it led to was you think about what happened with you kind of now got to start questioning things at Stoney. You got to start questioning things. They had that win against Adams, which was huge. Obviously, that was pre-Langdon Brothers. Where they had a big win. Actually, Tyree Smith went off in that one at Quentin Uguay. Or Quentin Rennie went off in that one for Stoney Creek. But I kind of think there were some personnel decisions that I think really hurt this team. Obviously, turning Tyree Smith into just a shooter, not a good recipe for success. I mean, we knew how good his older brother was. I mean, his older brother was an athlete. I mean, still, I thought that was a mistake. And then you look at the you kind of got to start thinking about program strength, program building. I mean, you got to start thinking that. And you kind of look at schematic wise. This was not, when you look at the success the sub-varsities had, when you install a diamond press, that is going to be very successful in the lower levels. But when they get to the varsity levels, the diamond press usually does not work because everybody knows it. So, when you look at it from a defensive perspective for Stoney Creek, this was not a very good defense. It really wasn't. They gave up a ton of points. They gave up a ton of, there were a lot of times that they take bad shots, turned it over. It just was a bad fit all around. It really was a bad fit. And, and I just think that, you look at when Owen took the job at Stoney, obviously, he wants to go up and down. He had a lot of success with that when he was at Warren Mott. But it wasn't going to work at Stoney, especially if you have a proven big guy. I mean, you look at with Stoney Creek, Spencer Beckman this year. You look, they tried. Don't get me wrong. They tried. But it just kind of that schematic system just really didn't work for Stoney Creek. And, another thing that failed them was their ability to, the fact that the division they were in. You look at the division that they were in. They were in the blue this year. I mean, the blue. Look at Adams. Of course, Adams in the red. Rochester was in the blue with Stoney Creek, but Rochester won the division. They got an upward trajectory with their program. Stoney Creek, I just don't know what I see with this program, because the fact of the matter is, you look at the freshman program that they had this season, we're very good. And even the last 3 years, the freshman program's been very good. And they had a really nice year. It's just when they get to JV, it depends what team you're looking at. Because normally, when you look at the JV program, that's where they run the diamond press. That's where you look at that defense. You know, a lot of people aren't prepared for that defense. And then when you get to the varsity level, that's where I think the disconnect goes. Because you look at that disconnect, that's really where the transition from JV to varsity, you better be ready to play. You better be ready to go. And I think, you kind of always assume that when they get up to varsity, they're ready to go. But it's clear to me that what Owen had were players that just weren't ready for varsity experience. Or the fact that times they look lost when it was out there. So you kind of see the disconnect here, to where it's the fact that the players just weren't clicking with Owen. They just weren't clicking with him. And that's why you see a coaching change, and the record proves it. The results prove it. When you look at the record, 19-47 in 3 years, that account, at Stoney Creek, you expect to win. You have one of the highest enrolled kids in the league. And the fact of the matter is, your boys basketball program was not able to get out of the blue. Even though when I looked at the previews, when I do my preview shows and all that for boys basketball, you kind of really think about it, I had Stoney Creek projected to win the division, both in the 2 years, prior years to this year. And the reason why I said that was because, you kind of think about the experience that they had, the 22 class. They had the experience. Anytime you had that experience, you say to yourself, okay, you had a rough year under Coach Norgrove, and now it's the pressure's on you. The pressure's on you guys. And it was clear to me, you kind of think about it, it's just the senior class and the new coaching staff just did not mesh. And that's where you have it 3-17. Because of that disconnect. Now, I get the new coach is trying to put a system in place. But anytime you have a senior-heavy team, you just want to think about running the stuff that they're accustomed to. But like I said, Rome's not built overnight. Really isn't. But then, to me, this was a systematic failure all around. I think, what led to this coaching change. Everybody's got a hand in it. Players, coaches, parents, everybody's got a hand on it. You clearly look at it. It's pretty simple. It really is. You look at, but in this case, it's the win-loss record. That's really where this is what got him canned. This is what got him let go. So you think about it, when you look at the record, the 19-47, you got to look at okay, how am I building my kids? How am I building the program for the future? It looked like they were very successful in the freshman JV levels, just not the varsity. And the varsity is the most important. That's when everything has to be in place. Everything has to be there. Now, personnel-wise, that could be another. Like personnel. I don't know if this group really fit together. I mean, there were some moves that I thought were very questionable. You think about it, there were some moves that were just really questionable that Owen did. I mean, he had a lot of interchangeable parts. Basically, it's just trying to settle on a rotation. I didn't think he did a really good job setting a rotation with this group. But then now you got to look at that win-loss record. You got to look at that win-loss record now. Because... And the losses were just mind-boggling. I talked about this year's team. I mean, they had that big win for them was that Adams game. But the two big losses were Ferndale University and A&T, both at home. Now you look at the first year. That Rochester loss, they split with Rochester. It's not a good loss. Really isn't. The Romeo loss, I give them a pass for that because they fought in that game. They came back in that game. Took the lead on Romeo at one point in the district first round. But then again, everybody knows Romeo's history. Everyone does. I mean, you look at Romeo's postseason history, it is not good. It is not a good history. But for Stoney Creek, you know what I mean? They had a chance in that game, against Romeo. Couldn't get it done, but they fought in that one. They battled and competed. So they kind of thought maybe that fight, that competitiveness would carry over in the next year. It did to some sort of point, but going from 3 to 6 wins, that's not enough. Really wasn't enough. And going from 6 to 10, it's good, but not enough. So clearly, when you look at the direction of the program, the direction was not very good when you look at it. So now, what happens then? What's going to happen now? For Owen, he's a good basketball coach. He's a really good coach. It's just this situation just didn't work out. It just really didn't work out for him. And you look at the obviously, it's going to be interesting to see. I think he's going to get another basketball job. I think he's going to get another basketball job. People look at Steve Norgrove, and when Norgrove left Stoney, he ended up getting the job at Fraser. I know he teaches at Fraser. But you look at what the job he's doing at Fraser, and he's done a really nice job of that team. He's done a really nice job of that program. Despite the wins and losses, he's done a really fantastic job with that program at Fraser. He's done a really nice job with them. So there is some questions when you look at Stoney Creek. When you look at this job, and I'm going to describe Stoney Creek's situation in a minute here. But when you look at Stoney Creek basketball, there's just a lot of questions, especially in boys. There is a lot of questions as we look into the future. There is going to be a ton of questions, especially with the boys program. So now let's talk about the future of Stoney Creek. Let's talk about the future. Because there's some question marks when I look at the program. When I look at Stoney Creek Athletics, there's questions. Been hearing a lot of rumblings in the news surrounding I've been hearing a lot of news with the athletic director at Stoney Creek. He could step down. Now I can't confirm that yet. I can't verify that yet. I didn't write a comment on that yet. But if it's true, then it'd be something to keep an eye on. The changeover at Stoney Creek has been absolutely insane. When you look at the turnover, that program, especially in their main sports, when you look at football, boys basketball, and girls basketball, you kind of got to start. I can describe all three of these situations, and they have pretty much one common denominator. So when you look at football, obviously Coach Rick Powell's the coach there. He's done a really good job there with that program, leading Stoney Creek to the playoffs in his first year. I think he's got that program in the right direction. And he's done a really good job with that program, despite the challenges that he's got ahead of him. But, he took over for Nick Merlo. Of course, Merlo stepped down after a really rough year in the Red. He ended up becoming the offensive coordinator at Orchard Lake St. Mary's. We know what Orchard Lake St. Mary's did last year. We can ask Groves that question. They won a Division II state championship. So you think about it, you look at what Merlo's done with Stoney Creek, the armor up culture. I know he trademarked it, and unfortunately it didn't end well. But, you kind of think about it. Program strength over there at Stoney Creek was on the rise, even under Merlo. I mean, you kind of look at the classes that Hart Middle School brought in, some parts of Ruther brought in, the youth levels at Stoney Creek, what they brought in kids. They brought in kids. They've done a really good job with program strength. And then when Powell took over, it's really, he's putting his system into place. And his system into place is working over there. It is working there. There's a lot of success over there when it comes to football at Stoney Creek. When you look at the Cougars this fall, second year under Coach Powell, you have a quarterback coming back. You have a very good lineman in Brody Rumler coming back. You got proven playmakers, particularly in the secondary, coming back. Stony Creek's going to be something to keep an eye on. I think the Cougars are going to be interesting this year. Really interesting. Now, when I look at the division they're in the white, Groves, who came off a Division II state semifinal appearance. Then you have Harper Woods, proven Division IV powerhouse there. They're loaded again next year. Then you take a look at Rochester, your arch rival. I still remember that game where they needed a touchdown from Sam Fogler to win that one. They scored a 2-point conversion to win that game. And they beat, and I still remember that one. People in Rochester still are very upset over that call. So you think about it with Rochester. You think about, and Rochester's interesting to keep an eye on. Really interesting. So I think Rochester could be a team to really watch for. And then there's A&T. A&T, was going to take a big step back after winning a Division I state championship 2 years ago. And they did. Don't get me wrong. They took a big step back. And now you look at A&T with the enrollment numbers, they're in Division II now. So 2 years after A&T wins the whole thing, they're now in Division II for the playoffs. The same thing with Lapeer, though. I'm surprised with Lapeer. They're in D2 for the playoffs as well. But for Stoney Creek football, you still got to play Adams this year. You got to play Warren Cousineau this year, which should be interesting. Because I think they come to Stoney Creek this year. They do got to go to Ann Arbor Huron to close out the year. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes. But I just think when you look at Stoney Creek and you think about this program, and then you look at, of course, they got to play week 2. They got to play Lake Orion, at Lake Orion, which is going to be interesting because it's Rick Powell's return to Lake Orion. And that'll be really interesting. It should be interesting. Week 2. You got Harper Woods coming to Stoney Creek. They got to go to Groves, which that's going to be interesting. Now, Groves is an interesting enigma with them because they lost so much talent, but there's some big question marks with Groves because after losing all that talent last year, how are they going to replace that talent? That's the big question we're looking at when it comes to Falcons. So when you look at football, Stoney Creek right now, Coach Powell has stabilized that program, considering where, it could have went, when Merlo stepped down. I mean, he's done a really nice job stabilizing that program. Now, let's look at girls basketball now. To me, this is really interesting how this one went down. Obviously, they had a very successful coach in Kellen James who took over that program for Brad Crichton. He led Stoney Creek. He had some deep runs with that team. He had some proven players in Mariah Zandy and Gabby Urick. I mean, Stoney Creek was the real deal. They were the real deal. Competitive. Always going to give you a battle. Physical. You know what you're going to get with Stoney Creek. You knew what you're going to get with them. But something went wrong in that 23 season. When you look at Stoney Creek coming into the year, then all of a sudden, Kellen James steps down. Writes on Twitter, obviously, parent pressure forced him out. And then you enter Columbus Williams, and first year leads that team to a state quarterfinal appearance. People ask me about Stoney Creek was obviously, Columbus we know is a really good coach. He was an assistant at Utica Ford under Coach Matt Joseph. Runs his own AAU program, the Michigan Goonies. You kind of think about leading away with somebody else's talent. That's really what happened there with Stoney Creek was Columbus reaped the benefits of, obviously a team that was built by Kellen James, and he had a really and they led him to the state quarterfinals. Now, obviously, the talent that Stoney Creek had was really good. We look at players like Sarah LaPrairie. You look at Merrick Schlabach. You look at, obviously, the Avash sisters. They all were big and instrumental in getting Stoney Creek to the state quarterfinals. But they fell to a very good Grand Blanc team. They fell to a really good Grand Blanc team. And then you look at this year's version of Stoney Creek. You lose the Prairie. You do have Schlauback coming back. Your program strength's okay. But then you bring in Jalen Freeman. And to me, I still have some questions surrounding it. But, you kind of think about it. She's supposed to be the one that replaces La Prairie. I mean, you got some players there that could play. I mean, obviously, the Voss sisters. You do have Samantha. You had both Fulkerson since you had Taylor Fulkerson there. I was really excited to see how Samantha Fulkerson played. You know what I mean? I was very curious to see how she would do within the system. But I was really disappointed. You know what I mean? I think Fulkerson's a heck of a player. Don't get me wrong. I really like her game. But I just think with her, with that system, obviously bringing Freeman in, you kind of think about, what are you going to do with Fulkerson? What are you going to do with her? I mean, you got her right now as the backup point guard. And I think, honestly, do I think they made a mistake? Very interesting. Time will tell if they did or not. Time will tell. But when I look at Stoney Creek right now, where they're at, you have to worry about program strength with this team. And then you look at that game against Utica Eisenhower. That's the game that you kind of say to yourself, what are the question marks going to be with this team? What are the question marks? Because defensively, I'll be honest with you, this is not a good team defensively. They are not very good defensively. Obviously, the Avash sisters, they're very good. But the question for me is defensively with these three sisters. That's, for me, question is defensively. And then, obviously, Freeman. Defensively, I don't think she's that good defensively. I've looked at the film. I mean, there's some times she did not look very good at times. But when you look at the division Stoney Creek's in, when you look at program strength, it is a big, big concern heading into next year. Obviously, you do return Freeman. You got the Avash sisters back. You have Fulkerson back. I mean, there's going to have to be some players that step up. Obviously, losing Schlauback is going to be a big, big, big loss for this team. Because Schlauback brought the energy. In that game against Utica Eisenhower, her technical foul changed the whole complexion of that game. It really did. You ask yourself, what if Schlauback doesn't get teed up? What could have been? Is it a different outcome? Wouldn't a Schlauback not fouled out early in the fourth quarter of that game? I mean, that was the difference of that game. Was that technical foul against Utica Eisenhower. Don't get me wrong. Don't give me credit. I mean, Utica Eisenhower is a good team. They're a very good team. But I asked myself that question. There were so many what-ifs in that game. So many what-ifs. I mean, missed shots, turnovers, you name it. You name it. That's what cost them. That's what cost them the district final. So now you got some questions. Comes to program strength. Program strength is a big, big question mark for the Cougars. You still have Hart there. You still have Ruther there. You're going to get a lot of those kids coming there to Stoney Creek. The fact that they have two programs is mind-boggling. It's really mind-boggling. When you look at your other city schools in Adams and Rochester, they have 3 right now. They have 3 programs: freshman team, a JV team, and a varsity team. So that kind of tells you where program strength is when it comes to those 3 teams. So it'll be interesting to see, and especially for Stoney Creek being in the red next year. When you look at, I think Clarkson's still there. Lake Orion's still there. West Bloomfield's still there. And now Oxford's there. And now you add Rochester. So that is another program I'm very concerned about when it comes to changeover. Boys basketball, I mentioned this with Jeff Owen being let go, but as I mentioned, this whole mess started in 22. When they didn't want Norgrove coaching the team. Norgrove stepped down. Enter Jeff Owen. It was going to be a rough year. Program transition period has to happen during the year. And, they went 3-17. And then the following year, 6-16. So you kind of think about it, very underperforming 2 years. Now, the second year, you kind of say, well, Stoney Creek had a young team. And they did. But your program strength was very good when you look at freshmen and JV. Both those teams had winning records, delivered results. But it comes down to the varsity. And then when they got up the varsity, you kind of think, okay, it's going to be the year. The year they turn things around. Maybe win a division title. Finish year 10-12. A lot of questions. And yeah, I get it. Coaches, they do have reviews at the end of the year. They look at, of course, relationship with the parents, with the players. They look at it. Don't get me wrong. Every coach has to go do that when they meet with the athletic director. They have to go do that. So I'm guessing, I'm not speculating. I'm speculating here, but I think that's pretty much what happened to Jeff Owen. So now you think about, what's going to happen next for this program, for Stoney Creek boys. Now you got to have a new coach in an unknown future. People ask me, when I look at the basketball situation, at Stoney Creek boys, Berkeley boys, Southfield boys, and then Ferndale girls, if I had to rank right now what is the best job right now, the most stable job right now, it's Berkeley. Then Southfield's a close second. When you look, the reason why I say those 2 jobs is because, one, you have a proven stable leadership, an athletic director. You have stable leadership. Your administration is stable. You have a basketball presence that wants to win. You could A&T's case, you have a proven winning athletic director and girls basketball coach Shakita Coaching. We know what she's done with A&T. But I have a lot of confidence in her. That she can find the right coach. Same thing at Berkeley. A lot of confidence. Ferndale girls, you kind of think about with them is, they got to find the right guy, or right girl. They got to find the right person. And then whoever takes that job at Ferndale has to find, has to re-recruit the school. Because there is certainly athletes at Ferndale. There is athletes. There is talent over there. So that's the challenge whoever takes the job at Ferndale for the girls' side. When you look at the boys' side at Stoney Creek, whoever takes the job there they got talent there. There's talent on that team. There's talent on that roster over there. The question's going to be is, how is the kid's mental psyche going to be? That is the big question for Stoney Creek, for the boys. That's the big question. How is the mental state of that program? Because it looks like now with Stoney Creek, you are basically not just replacing the varsity team, you're basically replacing almost the entire program. But you look at the success, particularly the freshman program, whoever the new coach is, I'd be very disappointed if they didn't keep that freshman coach on staff. He is good. He is good. I mean, you look at what he's done with that, with both those classes that he's had winning years. Now, people are going to say, well, that's in the blue. But when you look at the division Stoney Creek's in, you think about it. I mean, how will he do in the red if he had to go up against teams in the red? Like Adams on a consistent basis, a North Farmington, a Clarkston. I think Clarkston would be the barrier step there. West Bluefield, we know how good that coach on Jordan's programs have been. So I think the yardstick has to be Clarkston before you think about considering, if you're in a freshman program. Clarkston's pretty much the yardstick. The barrier. That's really much where you stack up is how you match up against Clarkston. So that's the most interesting point. So when you really think about with Stoney Creek, people ask me, well, why is it a toxic job? Why are you hard on? Because you look at Stoney Creek, the boys' job right now, it's not an easy job right now. Because one, look at who you're dealing with. You got to deal with the parent base that is, I know, been very frustrated for years over there. Really frustrated. But what I said earlier in the podcast, this is where the parents come in. Because, what I've heard is anytime there's you think about with coaches being let go or stepping down. You kind of think about it over there at Stoney Creek is, what's going on over there? What's going on? And everything keeps pointing to me at the parents. It keeps pointing it to me. So that's the question that I have, particularly with the boys program, and I think all levels at Stoney Creek is you look at the situation there. If you're winning games, you don't know what the avenue is. You look at teams when they produce results. It's when things get bad. It's when things get bad. And when you look at everything over there, kind of think about is if I'm a coach that wants to go there, think about it. You got to look at the situation. You got to look at it. There's great kids there at Stoney Creek. There's really good kids there. But the question question for me is when it comes to if you want the job at Stoney Creek, be ready. Be ready, you know what I mean? Be ready because you're going to have to, really do some things. You know what I mean? Obviously, what helps Stoney Creek is they got an experienced team coming back in the boys. But you gotta have a lot of patience there. You gotta really have a lot of patience. And I'm saying this to parents too. You gotta have some patience with new coaches. You gotta have some patience. You can't expect results right away and expect to win. It takes time to build programs. It takes time. And I know with coaches, they are with other coaches, they are, they don't have to do this. They don't have to do this. They don't have to take time of their busy schedule to be committed to your kids. They don't have to do that, but they do. And it comes down to, so that'll be really interesting to see who takes the job at Stoney Creek in the boys, how everything's going to be over there. Because right now, they've got to get some things fixed there. They got to get some things straightened up over there. They got to get their act together over there. That's really what it is. It's got to be the right person to do that. And a lot of questions linger with Stoney Creek, but it's particularly the three programs I mentioned. They're your three money makers. They're your three money makers. Football, boys basketball, girls basketball. People say you look at volleyball, you know what I mean? Yeah. You look at soccer. Yeah. Stoney Creek, obviously, when you look at with them, their soccer program's been pretty good in the past. They've been pretty good. So, you look at Stoney Creek, not a bad area. Don't get me wrong. The question for me is going to be, it's got to be the right fit over there. Because if it's not, then we're pretty much at square one. That's really what it is. And when you look at the division Stoney Creek's going to be in for boys basketball, they did do the divisions. They did announce those. You're in a division with your arch rivals in Adams and Rochester. Of course, Adams and Rochester are usually in the same district as Stoney Creek. You had Waterford Mott, who's coming into the league. We know how good Waterford Mott's been in the past under Coach Jeff Jason. Then you got Oxford. Of course, Oxford lost a lot of talent this year, obviously. So you look at Oxford, there's a lot of questions coming up for Coach Joe Fedorachak over there, or Coach Fed over there. And then there's Lake Orion. Lake Orion's kind of had Stoney Creek's number the last few years. And obviously they do have a former assistant at Stoney Creek and Jose Andrades. Of course, Andrades was the former assistant under Norgrove at Stoney Creek. Now he's at Lake Orion. He's done a really nice job with that program at Lake Orion. So, I don't know where Stoney Creek looks for their new coach. I don't know what direction they're going to go. But I'll tell you what. Whoever takes over that job is going to have a huge challenge ahead of them. Because you don't know what to expect with them. The question is, can the players trust the new coach? Can the players and new coach get on the same page? Can the parents and the new coach get on the same page? Because there has to be a transition period, and it has to happen, unfortunately, during the season. So that's where trust has to come into play. And there's some serious concerns when it comes to trust over there. Really serious concerns. That's the question coming in, especially on the boys' side of things. Trust is the big one. Can this program, this is going to be their third coach in 4 years over there. You look at the turnover, and especially in this athletic department, it's been immense. I mean, that's the key. You need long-term stability to be successful. I know people come and go, but for a program with this much changeover, something has to change. Something has to be mentioned. If Stoney Creek can get this right, I could see success for them in the future. But right now, there's just so many questions when you look at the program that the Cougars have. They need long-term stability. I mean, you look at Adams. You look at Adams with their long-term stability. They've done a good job handling that. Rochester, they've done a really good job handling that. Your city rivals have done a really good job handling program stability. They've done a really good job of that. Do I think Stoney Creek can get there? Absolutely, they can get there. I mean, you look at their strengths. You look at, of course, cheerleading is one of their strengths. You look at, of course, soccer. That's one of their strengths. Football, they're starting to get back in the thick of it. I mean, girls basketball, they've been up and down. But that's something to really keep an eye on. And that's one of my storylines in basketball, particularly in the boys. Can Stoney Creek, they got to get a new coach in there quick, because you got summer leagues coming up. You got camps coming up. And it's going to be critical for this program to get those camps in. It's critical. Because if not, if they don't have a coach by, let's say, before the start of football season in there, they could be in some serious trouble, especially when you look at the division they're in. And then you're staring at a possible district with Romeo and Utica Eisenhower in there. And we know how good those teams are. And you have the 3 Rochesters. You have the 2 other Rochesters, Adams and Rochester. And Rochester came off a district championship last year. Adams was in the district final. And considering last year with Adams, obviously what they went through with 2 players defecting their program, you got to give Coach Isaiah Novak a lot of credit. And I give him a lot of credit for that. What he had to do over at Adams. And then you look at what Rochester did. You got to give Coach Nick Ebola a lot of credit. And you look at that program that he's got over there at Rochester, they are built. They are built for the next 3 years there. They are built for success over there. So Rochester, you look at the stability they got over there. I'm telling you, they're built for the long haul. Really are. So it's going to be key. I think the boys' basketball job at Stoney Creek, whoever gets that job is going to be in for a ton of challenges ahead of them. But then now you got to look at, of course, the turnover at Stoney Creek. I'll be very curious to see how this will go. Especially when and especially what I'm hearing about the athletic director situation over there. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes over there. So we'll see what happens when it comes to Stoney Creek. I mean, this will be interesting to keep an eye on. What direction will they go? I mean, obviously, you look at program stability. You know what I mean? That's going to be key for Stoney Creek heading into the future. Program stability. Because when you look at a program that's had this much changeover as that school's had, that's not a recipe for success. It's not good. It's not good at all. So, coaches have got to be there long term. We're going to see what happens. We're going to see what happens. All right, everybody, I'm going to sign off here. Make sure you follow the blog at Saginaw Bay 4650 at blogspot.com for the latest information around the OAA. We're going to keep an eye on the basketball situations over at Berkeley, A&T, Stoney Creek for boys, Ferndale for girls. So we're going to see what happens as we head forward. I know we got spring sports still going underway right now, so that's something to really keep an eye on as we head forward. I'm going to sign off here. Make sure you sign on the blog at Saginaw 4650 at blogspot.com for the latest information around the OA. I'm going to sign off here. Take care. God bless. And I will see you all next week, everybody. Take care and God bless. See you all then. God bless.